Evening. This is Jackie Newbrough, and we want to welcome all of our friends from Why Liberty Matters who are joining us. Tonight we're embarking on a topic related to a collision with reality. This will be the first presentation of that part of the topic, and it is entitled Double-Mindedness is Unreality. So take it away, Dr. Marlene.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're here. And opening question, would you rather live in unreality or in reality? Okay, so people who live in liberty think differently than people who live in bondage. And not only do they think differently, they speak differently. And in order to think and speak differently, they have to be what? If you've been with us for a while, what's the next thing it's going to say? That people who live in liberty must be educated differently than people who live in bondage. Folks, we can't say this enough. Even now, as we have this wonderful resurgence and awakening about education, a lot of folks are trying to run away from the model that they've come to see the flaws in, but at the same time, they're using the same methods and a lot of the same mindset and frame, and all they'll be doing is framing up that same thing they're trying to run away from by in their own homes or in their Christian schools, and then wondering what happened. So it's extremely important that you get this, because if it's wrong in premise, it is wrong in result. Now, there's a connection here that must be made, and that is that the gospel properly presented leads to liberty. And liberty properly taught makes one hungry for the gospel. Also, there is a language and method that leads to liberty, and a different language and method that leads to bondage and tyranny. So if, with good intent, you use the language and method that leads to bondage and tyranny, that's all it can give you. If you use a flawed theology that leads to bondage and tyranny, that's all it can give you. So be very careful what seeds you plant in your own mind and allow them to grow, and what you plant in your children's minds. So biblical methodology with biblical content results in a biblical worldview. But dialectic methodology, even with biblical content, results in good little socialists. Now, that is a microcosm right there of why we have so many socialists running around. And if that is going to be remedied, we have to remedy not just the content, but the method. Now, Brent Winters says no man has a right to do wrong. And we have had a belief system that is trying to codify or legalize the right to do wrong. You can think about that. That's kind of a sidebar before we head on further in. So, unreality is one of the first steps toward tyranny. Okay, I want you to think about this, because what I'm doing here is I'm setting up a mental frame to consider the why of what has been happening in the nation, and I'm not telling you the things you're hearing other places. I may touch upon them. Some of you have already been understanding this, but I'm putting it together in a way that will be very empowering for you and will give you language that will help you explain this to others. So this teaching is an attempt to make sense out of the nonsensical, and to help you see that you have more control over your future than the powers that think they be want you to realize. That's one of our terms from many years ago. I still think it communicates better than anything I've ever heard, and it's the powers that think they be. I never say the powers that be. Okay, now, we live in a crazy mixed-up world. Do you know there are people who purposely beg an 18-wheeler to hit them in order to collect the insurance money? Or they try to get a wealthy-looking driver to wreck into them for the same reason? Now, someone we know always drove a nice car and looked rich, whether he was or not. One day in Dallas, he had a car full of immigrants jump in front of him out of nowhere. He did everything he could to stop, but still hit them. He was terrified because he could see children in the vehicle. When the door opened, he was shocked. They had a mattress in the back that they were going to throw on the side of the road before the police arrived. Now, either they thought the mattress would protect the children or they didn't care. They risked their children to collect insurance money. Our friend was terrified, and fortunately none of the children were hurt. What bothered this man was he could tell this was not the first incident, and he expected they would try it again. This was really hard on him. Now, once a society accepts the group lie, leaves objective reality, and abandons logic, and replaces it with the dialectic process, which is the method of confusion, then double-mindedness is the natural consequence. Being double-minded is not just confused, ignorant, or naive. Being double-minded is evil. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's from James 1:8. Okay, so hint for where some of this is coming, in order to use doublespeak, as in the dialectic doublespeak, you have to be double-minded. The two go together, okay? Now, our cultural confusion is purposeful confusion. Satan is the author of confusion, and confusion from redefinition is part of Agenda 21. Now, this is 2021 when this is being made. We're very close to the end of the year. It's shocking how fast the year has gone. And we're going to explain this more about why we're using Agenda 21 as the overarching word, even though there's now Agenda 2030 and others. We're using that as kind of an umbrella word for all the parts of this puzzle, because you can't go through them all every time. Now, you have probably heard about the inconsistencies in the worldviews of Christians in the United States. This has been documented, especially by George Barna, and is proven out through the PEERS, that's P-E-E-R-S, survey from Dan Smithwick of Nehemiah Institute. The only instrument of its kind, PEERS stands for politics, economics, education, religion, and social issues. Okay, it is the only instrument of its kind. And it measures the worldview of a student, teacher, administrator, pastor, or anyone wanting to know whether they really hold to a biblical worldview or not. Since Christian teachers are trained in the same godless methods as non-Christian teachers, even Christian colleges, universities, and seminaries are soft on the authority of the Scriptures. And the church seems to be more enculturated by the world than the world changed by the church. So we should not be surprised by the dismal results Christian school personnel display on the PEERS test. Now, Barna tells of how each generation gets more disconnected from biblical thinking and holds to views that are logical impossibilities without even realizing they are inconsistent. Orwell predicted this in his book, 1984. And this is a quote from Orwell's book, 1984. The power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. Okay, then it goes on. To tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them, to forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All this is indispensably necessary. Even in using the word doublethink, it is necessary to exercise doublethink. For by using the word, one admits that one is tampering with reality. By a fresh act of doublethink, one erases this knowledge, and so on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth. It's from George Orwell, 1984. Now, this has not happened to our nation by accident. This double-mindedness is not only wicked, inevitable, and planned. Biblicists warned that the slightest movement from absolute truth had dire consequences. Well-meaning people who wanted to at least maintain the status quo did the best they knew how by exposing evil or speaking against the moral decline of the nation. What they did not understand is all the effort spent exposing the darkness could only be countered by knowing the truth. Now, I hope you see that I'm explaining where do we put our focus. Where are we going here for solutions instead of drowning in the problem? Now, in the temptation, that's the Luke 4 passage where Jesus was tempted. Okay, so that's what I mean, in the temptation. Jesus did not tell us how evil Satan is. He showed us how to respond. In Luke 4, we are given the "it is writtens" that answer whatever temptations will be perpetrated upon us. If the baby boomers had been taught the uncompromised word, they would not have fallen prey to a weakened gospel. There's no substitute for knowing the word, believing it, and acting upon it. Because some people know it, but they really don't. They know it intellectually, they don't believe it. Or some people really believe it, but they never act upon it. So that's why you have those 3 stages here, because it's hard to believe something you don't know, because faith comes by hearing and hearing by the Word of God. And you certainly can't act upon something if you don't know what it is first. Okay, now, another point. What one generation allows in moderation, the next generation will allow in excess. If we had known the pure biblical definitions, we would not have been deceived by the redefinitions that led to doublethink and thus doublespeak. This creates a continuous circle of self-confirmation that entraps the mind and enforces camaraderie with others who think and speak the same way. This weaves stronger and stronger resistance barriers to truth and to truth speakers. So this is why a little bit of lie built upon another little bit of lie that looks very innocent eventually creates a strong resistance barrier to truth. And, of course, anybody who speaks the truth. Now, this change in worldview is perpetrated purposefully and gradually by master brainwashers. The most effective techniques are studied, practiced, observed, honed, and repeated in a predictable, laboratory-like manner. This is what is meant when educationists wrote of making the classrooms of America into laboratories of change. These same tactics have been applied to the churches via seminary-trained pastors, through medical schools via unsuspecting medical doctors, and now through business via colleges and workplace trainings. It has happened without the masses realizing what was done to them, and that was also by design. The world in which we live is different from any world we could have imagined, and that is also by design. There was a reason the textbooks had to be changed and grammar could no longer be taught as a standard. And we've talked about some of these things in some of our other webinars where we devoted a whole webinar to grammar and language and how language is used to change culture. Okay, so then also changing the history of the nation was a step in tearing down the monuments on the road to new heroes, new values, and a new form of civil government. Non-reality is necessary. Okay, so for all of this to happen, non-reality is necessary. People must be unsettled, destabilized, and have their lives discombobulated to get them to go along with the bigger agenda. Eventually, everyone is too tired to say anything or fight it anymore. They are out of resources, but even more dangerous, out of will. All their efforts to resist can seem futile, and that hopelessness contributes to victimhood. That is why the practical solutions we have proposed are so important. And it's why we're going to build a proper foundation before we go into those, because we're teaching you for understanding, not for a quick flash in the pan, but for something here that will be lasting, not just for now, but for future generations. Now, you must maintain hope and do what you can, no matter how small or meaningless it seems. The good thing about this unsettling is that it can lead to greater liberty. Bondage is only inevitable if we agree to the premises being thrust upon us by the powers that think they be. Now, we talk about this a lot, but a problem cannot be solved at the same level it was created. We must consider a reassessment of the problem as well as some inconvenient and uncomfortable solutions. I am not here to offer you comfort. If you came for comfort, this is the wrong place. Okay, for what we're going to talk about is very uncomfortable, but in the long haul will bring you more peace and comfort than the stuff that claims to be comfortable and convenient at this moment. Okay, now I am here to offer you a higher level of thinking about the problem and solutions that are long-term, whether immediate or not. Now, this is a quote, and I'll show you where it's from in a minute. And this is the quote. Now the American people were forced to confront a scary alternative reality. The reality of a shadow government over which they had neither control or knowledge. Now, this is from Michael Hoffman's page 86, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. Okay, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. I'm going to put the cover up. I've been told I should never quote from him. He's too controversial, that people won't listen at all if we quote from somebody like him. The thing is, the man's a hardcore researcher. You don't have to like what he concludes, but you do have to reckon with the quality of his understanding and the documentation with which he reaches those conclusions. So I think he puts a lot of things in perspective that others do not. Now, whatever label folks will accept for those who choose to perpetrate evil against others, most people will at least accept the premise that there are people who, wittingly or unwittingly, want power, money, and control so badly that they will go to great lengths to obtain it. Now, don't get hung up about the label of these people. So whether these people are called Illuminati, Freemasons, or different secret societies, deep state, the Vatican, shadow government, conspiracy theory, or science fiction, okay? The mystery, intrigue, and fear of the unknown, or that which one cannot control, plays its tricks on our psyches. See, people who've loved at least freedom have fought over, are they this group or that group? And that has taken away our energy from what is the answer, because the answer, the truth is the truth, and it's the same. It answers no matter what label the people that are against liberty are wearing at that moment, or one person thinks they should have or another. I'm not naive about those labels. I'm just saying, folks, there's only so much energy, and we need to figure out how we are going to bring forth the truth that is the answer. Now, we are less afraid of what we understand or trust. Even electricity was feared at the beginning. Now we should still have a healthy fear of it and know the protocols of healthy, respectful use. But you don't find people so afraid of it that they will not allow it in their homes. Christians should be the least concerned by these forces of evil we're talking about. And if we were walking in our ecclesia or ecclesia with full understanding of how to take dominion over the principalities and powers, they would be afraid of us instead of us being afraid of them. Okay, now, Tex Mars uses different terms for these evil forces, many times depending on what they call themselves or the time period in history he is documenting, where certain groups manifested under different names in different places. Now, Tex was a hardcore researcher, master of his subject matter. One second. And while disliked by those he cast light upon, his books name names and give dates, times, and places, often with photographs and eyewitness accounts. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from a Tex Mars book, and then I'll tell you which one. And he says, Illuminists are demonic, possessed experts at doublethink and are always determined creators of a new reality. Thus, the Illuminists contend that free speech is absolute, but there are some things you cannot say and will be punished for saying, even if they are true. The Illuminati hold that everything has two opposite sides, but both sides are true at different times. For the Illuminati, gender and nationality are flexible and changeable. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Only the simpleton would believe and confess otherwise, they say. Now, this is from the foreword to his book called Hell's Mirror. And yes, the emphasis was in the original, and there's the cover of the book. The book is really ugly as far as a lot of things that it has in it. But what I want you to see, folks, is that a lot of the thinking about like that everything has two opposite sides and both sides are true at different times, you see Christians wearing a yin-yang symbol. You see Christians in this inconsistencies I mentioned earlier, in the syncretism that's going on in the Christian world, of Christians mixing what the Bible says with pagan worldviews. And that's what we're getting at. That explains why Christians are no longer resistant to those views, because they have embraced them through their churches. Now, this explains why we are told that our diversity is our strength, why it is so important to have gender fluidity, open borders, and I hope everybody here knows that's a euphemism for no borders, and therefore no countries. No country. Folks, when your children or grandchildren talk about open borders, make sure you bring that up. Well, that's just a euphemism for no borders. Okay, now, they're also going on to be consistently involved in wars around the world, and why we are told we will own nothing and be happy. That's another way of saying we will be slaves, and also brainwashed, really, because only slaves and prisoners own nothing. and then we will willingly accept our quote-unquote freedom, which is really bondage. This also explains why so many ignorant and clueless people have diplomas certifying their schooling. Now, we can't call it education, and I will not call it education because it's schooling, it's not education. And please always make that distinction with people that instead of calling it that they got an education, or maybe they got a miseducation, and we actually have a teaching that explains miseducation, diseducation, and all those things. Okay, now, no one asks a truly educated person where they went to school as verification of their education. Now, they might be asked to find out where, like a parent hears somebody speak and says, "Where'd you learn that? Please tell me where to send my child." You know, so they might be asked by a parent about where to send their child, so the child becomes educated like the wise person. Or they might be asked as a matter of resume, but never in question of their intelligence and that they are educated. Now, sadly, today, an educated person has learned not to ask about the schooling of the ignorant, because it seems the more ignorant, the more schooled, I finally come to conclude processed, the person has been. You know, the dialectic process, that's what gifted and talented is all about, is giving you an extra dose of processing in order to get you to the place they want you. Now, the term ignorant just means a person does not know. So we are all ignorant in some area. That's why mechanics and plumbers are so needed. So the woke ignorant are a different breed, because they have been programmed to believe that anyone who disagrees with them does not just hold to a different opinion, but is evil. So evil they do not have the right to breathe air, speak, or be heard. They must be silenced for the good of the group. Okay, this is the key point of why. What's the difference with these people? Why can't we just have a rational conversation, and even as much as I don't like the term agree to disagree, at least have respect for each other instead of looking upon the rest of us as evil? Okay, now, the woke ignorant know how to be officially offended, turn themselves into a victim, and turn the questioner into a bigot just for asking. By this evidence, you can conclude they have been to, this is again my term, dog training for people, and put through a variety of Skinner boxes, because when the stimulus of anything that makes them uncomfortable occurs, they have an immediate pre-programmed response. Okay, so that's stimulus response. And people who do mind control and brainwashing and all of that know how to put out the appropriate stimulus in order to get the response that they want. Many of the things naive people, including leaders of major Save the Country organizations, said could never happen in the United States have not just happened, but warnings were issued if anyone chose to listen. Okay, now this is when I say this about the Save the Country organizations, I think you know I love these people, but it grieves me greatly that there was so much warning put out, and these leaders of these Save the Country organizations kept doing the same thing that wasn't working. They just did it harder and raised more money to do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the warnings that were issued that nobody seemed to listen, and a lot of the people in the pew didn't listen because their leaders said you don't need to listen. Now, so these warnings came from across the board by hardcore biblicists like Edgar C. Bundy and others writing in the 1960s and 70s. Now, don't worry about whether you know who all these people are. We have listeners that do know who some of these people are, but if you don't, that's not the point. You don't need to go look up everybody in this list. But some of you need this list in order to appreciate where I'm heading here next. So the rest of you just give a little bit of deference while we go through this list. Okay, so we've quoted Bundy a lot over the years. Now, okay, so that's back in the 1960s and 70s. Researchers like Michael Hoffman II, writing since the 1990s, or Tex Mars, or Richard Wurmbrand in Marx and Satan. Historians like Generations authors Strauss and Howe. Now, these are not all Christian authors, okay? But I'm saying these people were giving warnings, and they were speaking reality. Okay, economists and professors like Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams. Students of the law like Brent Allen Winters, Harmon Taylor. Ministers and truth exposers like Marshall Foster, Paul Jaley, Carl Reed, Dean Gocher, Bert Cause, and myself. Analysts like William S. Lind and Stephen Coughlin, and most of all, Leonard Peikoff. Now, there were so many more. We could devote 2 or 3 webinars documenting how the American people in general and the church in particular were warned repeatedly, and then some more, and then again. And like Proverbs 1, chose not to listen. I don't know how many of you have read Proverbs 1 and Psalm 1 today. If you didn't, read it. But it really puts in perspective a lot of what's going on. And at the end of Proverbs 1, it gives the fate of those who would not listen to God's warning. And I would say, may our fate not be the same. Now, in our study groups, our Liberty study groups in the 1980s, when we taught from principle instead of issues and wanted to raise up a generation of self-governing people, instead, the leaders with big platforms wanted to raise up followers for their causes, both political and religious. They were called pep rally style, Save the Country organizations, which gave out great information but didn't teach people how to think and take control of their own destinies. Now, folks, I'm a little slow on the uptake sometimes on figuring out what's really going on, and it took me a long time to figure out what I'm getting ready to tell you. Okay, so, and some of you have known this all along, but we've got to put this in perspective. Okay, so instead, these powerful Christian leaders controlled the flow of information, giving out enough to satisfy immediate hunger, but never really teaching the people how to mine the truth for themselves. Now, these Christian leaders wanted dependency and needed the masses to need them and look to them as their source. I could not put words to it at the time, but my spirit was disturbed. And even though I did not know then what I know now, I knew the difference between fleeting and lasting. These dominant Christian leaders were growing followers and institutions, while instead, by teaching people to think from principle, I was growing self-governing individuals who were not only not dependent, but who would raise their children as torch bearers of liberty. I kept trying to say we had the same agenda. We didn't have the same agenda. Now the fruit of all this has come to manifestation, and we are at a precarious time in history. It appears those of us who know are diminishing, but the final chapter of that book is not written yet. What I am telling you is not conjecture or observation, but first-hand experience. I was too young and naive at the time and held these Christian icons in such regard that I could not entertain the idea that they had anything but the finest of motives until the same things happened over and over. You know, how many times does it take to make it no longer a coincidence? Now, we were working with Charles Hull, H-U-L-L, Wolf, author of a section in one of the books published by FACE, that's the Foundation for American Christian Education, and one of my greatest mentors. The man transported me back to the Continental Congress, where today's revisionist historians say that there is no way any of the attendees could write down the minutes of the meetings because shorthand had not been invented yet and there were no mechanical recording devices. This is used in the rewriting of the history to say that any of the minutes of the Continental Congress or even things that are said in the Federalist Papers and all of that they couldn't have it accurate because it was impossible. Well, I saw a person who could do it, and Dr. Wolf could sit, and apparently effortlessly. I mean, he looked like he was just kind of writing casually. And he'd take down in beautiful hand, easily readable, the exact words of the speakers. Now, my notes are good, and I can get most of it down, but it is hard to read. I must go back soon afterwards to make corrections, fill in key words I missed, all of that kind of thing. But it was not just Dr. Wolf's skills. His broad range of reading, his grasp of the material, or the state of the nation, but the man himself that was so providential for my life. Liberty resonated from his cells. He had read so much literature about liberty that he knew the intricate differences between the founders and knew what mattered and what did not. Now, Dr. Wolf was the head of one of the national divisions for a major organization, and I was the head of that same division for Texas as well as a national advisor, and it was because of my study groups and materials being so well developed. At the time, I was just starting out and felt so inadequate until Dr. Wolf asked me a few questions that were not only instructive in themselves. In other words, the way the question was asked, he was teaching you, and it was just incredible. It was an incredible lesson just by the question. But he also helped me assess my priorities. Now, I later found out it was a test, a job interview, and more, and I guess it seems that I passed the test. So even though we were working with the premier Save the Country organization of the time, Dr. Wolf was treated horribly. He was interrupted while at the podium, repeatedly had his time cut, was not given respect, and had to fend for himself for rides, meals, and basic supplies. Those of us working with Dr. Wolf served him as best we could, but we were all met by obstructionists at every level and had the same things happen to us. Okay, so, and we have many times on our webinars, we have people who worked in other divisions of the same organization and made many of the same observations, and it's just been fascinating of how those of us that were the liberty lovers and the stalwart ones who stood for truth have now kind of come back around full circle and have found each other again, even if we didn't know each other then. I'm just still in awe of how God does that. Okay, but now it's time to go back to Leonard Peikoff. As far as I am concerned, Peikoff offers the most decisive book on how the current judgment could have been avoided. I mean the judgment on the nation, and why a master strategy is needed. In Ominous Parallels, that's the title of his book, much is explained about the tactics of brainwashing. Now, that is a cover of the paperback version of the book. There, every once in a while, you can still find a hardback also. So, Ominous Parallels, and okay, I'm just leaving it up there for a second for you to see it. And Peikoff is spelled P-E-I-K-O-F-F. Now, if you have not listened to our whole series on brainwashing, it will save you many hours of research. Peikoff was not only brilliant, he knows how to think. He has a broad and deep grasp of his subject and knows how to extrapolate the consequences of ideas. He is a multidimensional polymath who puts most scholars to shame. And if you don't know what polymath is, make sure you look it up. Okay, now, because of his affiliation with Ayn Rand, that's A-Y-N-R-A-N-D, many Christians, sorry to say, who are not known for their own scholarship, wrote him off. Okay, and I'm not a big Ayn Rand fan, but what I'm saying to you is that they just wrote him off or somehow didn't know he existed, let alone had written the most definitive book of our time to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The book was written in 1982. I probably got my first copy in 84 to 85. I think it forced the growth of more brain cells than anything other than the Bible that I've ever read, because I hadn't been exposed to things like that, and I needed that information at that time. So, Peikoff's main point: don't just hope Nazi Germany does not return. Understand what its causes were, and don't let them infect your culture. Okay, hoping is not going to solve the problem. You'd better understand what's really going on. In order to understand its cause, you have to have an accurate assessment. Your analysis of the problem must be correct in order to have a proper solution. Okay, this is the root of cause to effect. It's why it's in my 5 Pillars of Liberty book, point number 2. It is why it is other places in our material, cause to effect. Okay, now, you must think strategically, that's long term, and not just tactically, that's near term, short term. Peikoff's whole book is a reality check. If you live in reality, you don't have to have a collision with it. Many of the lies we are asked to believe right now as a society have been gradually programmed into us over time. Now, besides Peikoff, this is explained in a different way in Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare by Michael A. Hoffman II. That's the black and white cover on the book. Okay, now, I just want you to know this is said other places. Now we're going back to Peikoff. In his chapter about concentration camps, Peikoff explains how there has to be a negation of personhood in order for the prisoners to yield their essential self to the controllers. Rules that are nonsensical and mandates that are inconsistent, arbitrary, absolute, like right now, no medical or religious exemptions many places, and constantly changing are all part of the path to tyranny. Peikoff describes the brainwashing that everyone was subjected to, not just the prisoners, but the guards also. In other words, the guards are prisoners too, much like slave masters are trapped by the system as well. Now, this next quote is from Peikoff. He says, with every causeless punishment he inflicted, whether in response to an order or on his own initiative, the young guard was negating the idea of man as a sovereign, rights-possessing entity. He was negating it not only in the prisoner's mind, but in his own. With every unthinkable atrocity he committed, the guard was negating his former sense of morality. He was helping to make unreal in his own eyes his pre-camp life, including such non-Nazi values as he had once pursued. With every insane rule and switching contradiction he enforced or invented, the guard was schooling himself in senselessness. He was learning to make the negation of logic into a mental habit, which soon became second nature to him. Now, this is from page 268 in Ominous Parallels by Leonard Peikoff. There's the cover again. Okay, folks, do you see that the insane, it's in essence a form of insanity, is what is going on? It's like a programmed insanity. Now, one of the things that I concluded from reading Goff and Hunter and others on brainwashing and seeing how the Word of God deals with these issues is that a person has to become inhumane in order to commit inhumane acts. A person who hates constantly sends a message of hate to every cell of his own being. A person who wishes harm on others is wishing that same harm upon himself. A person who doesn't think others have the right to speak or breathe air is having to justify his own right to speak or breathe air. One of the focal points of Black Lives Matter has to do with breathing. The current disease that is being fueled by hatred and division has symptoms that deal with breathing. There is a spiritual connection between our souls and our bodies. And one of my biggest concerns with anybody who can't walk in forgiveness, why I wrote a book on forgiveness, why I'm billed as the Lady of Liberty and Forgiveness, is that you have to forgive and you have to walk in forgiveness for your own health, for your own joy, for your own blessing. You want to bless everybody you meet, not focus all the time on what's wrong with them or what's bad, because that comes back into your own being. So, a summary of Ominous Parallels from its promotional materials says it, quote, identifies the root of Nazism in the philosophical ideas of the worship of unreason, demand for self-sacrifice and elevation of society over the individual, and argues that these ideas are present in America today. Peikoff talks about people making themselves brainless. Now, doesn't that sound like zombies? Alive but dead, the walking dead. It may explain why people reenact being zombies today, just like our family used to reenact different periods of history. We used to dress up, and all the kids had costumes and you know, of different historical periods, and it was so much fun. And I have to give Little Bear Wheeler the credit for much of that inspiration, and my own mother for her encouragement in that area and her own example of that. And also, I think I don't know why I'm supposed to also give a blessing right here to Roland Cadle. Those of you from Pennsylvania and the Northeast who know this amazing man, who also, he was like the person in that part of the world who would dress up in costume from pioneer days and founding country days, and the man rebuilds log cabins and is the hornsmith, all those, almost every bit of horn that's ever used in any movie from Hollywood was made in Roland Cadle's workshop. And horn is the horn from a cow. Okay, we're talking about horn is God's natural plastic. And so these, you know, this was a way we learned about different periods of history and made it real to us. But see, today you have people reenacting being zombies. So how much acting are they doing? I mean, this is really sad, folks. There's no joy in saying that. Okay, now, Peikoff makes it very clear that tyranny is accomplished by a break with reality. And this is what he said. The prisoners could not believe a world in which the whim of the SS, that's their secret service, their police, okay, set all the terms of human existence, replacing reality as the basic absolute and frame of reference. Okay, so the whim became the frame of reference. That's from page 269 in Ominous Parallels. Now, what were some of these random acts that the prisoners were forced to witness or give detailed descriptions of? We won't go into any details, but medical experimentation, needless surgeries on healthy people, medical care denied to those in need, heartless, bizarre, and strange forms of punishment inflicted on people that would have even been called cruelty to animals in a reality world. In other words, the people were treated worse than you would ever want an animal to be treated. In order to disorient the masses and get them to give up, acts had to be senseless, deny a person of their dignity, and violate the basic law of existence, the law of identity. Now that's a summary and then a little quote from page 270. So, wearing a mask over one's face violates the law of identity. At some level, people know that a regular piece of cloth could not stop the germs we are supposed to be afraid of. But it is easier to agree with the politically correct position than to fight it. They are already scathed and have lost the will to fight. Vernon Coleman expresses his concerns that the longer people wear masks, the more unlikely it is they will be able to fight back. As a medical doctor, he's out of the UK, he says that even a slight drop in oxygen levels over a long period of time can damage a person's clarity. And this is a quote from Vernon Coleman. The constant rule changing is not a sign of confusion in government. It is a sign that they are simply trying to increase their control over us by making us more stressed and fearful. The media is essential in this ploy. Now that's from page 74, Vernon Coleman. The name of his book is there on the screen. It's called Endgame, and the subheading is The Hidden Agenda 21. Okay, so he's saying it's like being played with. And it shows how much power, when somebody can play with you, how much power they have over you. Now, all these rule changes are exhausting, and exhausted people don't have the energy to think, let alone speak up or stand up for liberty. When people feel hopeless and that there is nothing they can do, they become very vulnerable. Now, I am concerned that even allowing them to protest can be used to set them up for more defeat and disappointment. In Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, Hoffman tells of the long-term stages of mind control. He says we are now past the phase where the attempt to control us is kept hidden. In other words, early on, they don't want you to know anybody's trying to control you. Then there's kind of, some people go, do you think somebody's trying to control us? And then that's kind of played one against the other, those who say, oh yeah, and those who say no. Hoffman says now we are in the, quote, revelation of the method stage, meaning that it's time for us to know we have been programmed. Now, folks, I know I bring it up all the time. I talk about page 11 in Mountains of Deceit, where I give you the steps to the dialectic process. But what Hoffman is saying, there's steps to brainwashing, and we've talked about this in the brainwashing teaching and all. But I want you to see now they actually are not just revealing the method, but they're assuming there's nothing you can do about it. So there is no fear of telling us because our controllers believe there is nothing we can do about it. We have been conditioned to believe there is nothing we can do about it. Now, I think this would be true were it not for the Word of God, that gives us a power higher than ourselves with which to respond. It is also time for the evil to have a collision with the Creator, with the truth. They have an accounting to give. So remember, even though the people who mean well are running into a collision with reality, the evil is still going to have, the evil still has to contend with the reality, with the truth. And we need to rethink how we see that. Now, yes, they can be used by Yahweh to judge evil, but eventually evil will be judged. So if a person is traumatized by seeing a murder, what about them seeing hundreds of murders in movies, TV, video games, or vocalizing about them via rap music? So Hoffman talks about this. He says the role assigned to us is that of zombies called upon by our shadow masters to perform bit parts and act as stock characters in their spectacular show. This mesmerizing process produces a demoralized, cynical double mind. That's from page 87 in Hoffman's Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. Now, Hoffman suggests that, as a nation, we have been mesmerized by a massive brainwashing campaign that involves violence in movies, thus desensitizing us to normal reactions. Seeing atrocities on TV and movies has a cumulative and group effect on the culture. Now, back in the newspaper age, someone would read a newspaper about like a murder that happened in New York City or something. But it was far away and they didn't see it. There usually wouldn't have been a photograph or anything in the paper, let alone now we have footage of it. And we see this video footage, and like when there's a school shooting or whatever, we see this over and over and over again. And then we find out about them all across the nation, which makes it look, and I'm not diminishing what's going on, but I'm saying it makes it look like there's even more, and it overloads a portion of our coping mechanism within us because we're not made to take in all of that information and all that negativity, and it desensitizes us to normal reactions. And then it has seeing all these atrocities on TV and movies, it has a cumulative and group effect on the culture. So the value of human life is lessened, not just that of others, but that of ourselves. While the theme of oppression and generational victimhood can be used by Black Lives Matter and Antifa and other groups like that, to mind wash a whole new generation of young Americans and derail them from a life of high productivity and blind them to the opportunities at their fingertips. These strategies were not developed from a vacuum. Now, we've talked before about the idea of in essence, the time value of thought, not just the time value of money. And so in the time someone's thinking about how much they've been wronged, how much they've been victimized, how unjust whatever happened to them is. And I'm not justifying any injustice, but I'm saying you have to look at it and say, if we only have so much energy, are we using our energy wisely by thinking about being a victim, or should we spend more time figuring out how to become a victor? How is that? How do we become better instead of bitter when bad things happen to us? Now, the American people of all races have been pawns in a massive re-education game that could be titled, quote, transformation. Now, I'm going to talk to you about my little game that I think of it as a board game, and this is just a way to teach you some ideas and get a very quick timeline here that I think will be helpful for where we're heading even in future weeks of teaching. Okay, so game title on the cover of the box, it says transformation. Now, you will notice in this re-education game, all the memorable events are traumatic. No group commemoration is paid to the wonderful events. The only celebrations are when a war is over or people feel past some sort of life-changing, difficult-to-overcome event. In this game, there are many stations. Now, I'm only giving you a few of them here. One station, and we're starting at World War I and in this discussion. Okay, so one station is World War I. where more white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men from both sides were killed than any other category, and the boundaries of Europe were realigned. Next is the Great Depression, where those who survived World War I were then purposefully traumatized for a massive redistribution of wealth, stealing another level of hope and dignity. This state of despair was lengthened by design and made worse by the government confiscation of the gold in 1933. Okay, after the confiscation of the gold, then what happens? Well, once the will of the people was broken, the statist way of providing a solution to the overabundance of available men of working age was World War II. Now, this is what central planning will get you, folks, okay? So World War II reset the structure of the family by sending the women to the factories. Women from the heartland flooded to California to the factories and to other factories. But these rosy derivators wanted their men to come home soon, and they still wanted to have husbands, homes, and babies. And they actually wanted the husband before the baby. Okay, you get it. Okay, now, the intended goal of making them despise the family structure was not quite accomplished. So what's the next station on the game? Well, the Korean War was next. It gave a war to fight to those who were too young for World War II and who would be too old for Vietnam or the next war that was coming. Then you have the assassination of JFK that destabilized the nation and made the people wonder who was responsible. Vietnam was next. It was more about losing faith in traditional values, traumatizing another generation, and lessening respect for hard-working meritocracy. Vietnam opened the door for a total restructuring of authority structures, especially so far as the feminist movement and the lack of raising that resulted for the next generation of children. The massive trauma of 9/11 is still not healed, as more mysteries have been raised and questions left unanswered. Wars in the Middle East led to more destabilization. The Obama presidency that came in with so much hope closed with more division. The Trump presidency, that was a pushback on statism, still allowed COVID restrictions and was derailed by the false flag of January 6th. The Biden presidency is an all-fronts assault on the Constitution and individual liberties, as well as forcing the implementation of outright socialism. Yes, this game's not really a game played for fun, but it quickly documents the traumas of our nation. So we're saying from trauma to trauma to trauma to trauma affects people's psyche. It also affects how they solve problems and who they expect to solve problems. So just like with individual traumas, you can come out of it better or bitter. You can get stronger or weaker. You can learn the necessary lessons or be more clueless and disillusioned than before. To become stronger and wiser, you must reject the lies we have embraced as national lies and consider solutions we will be offering in a coming webinar. Okay, now the lines are going to open real soon, so please have your background noise quiet or mute yourself. If you have crying babies or barking dogs, have them quieted or mute your line. And our handouts, we have a handout about blessing versus curse. We have cultural freefall. And then the 3-column chart and the microcosm pretty well go together because the microcosm explains the 3-column chart. There's way more about this subject. This is an introduction to give you time to think and understand and contemplate what we're talking about to be ready for the next couple of weeks.
All right, so lines are open.
Very good, Marlene. This is Dean in Denver.
Wonderful. Thank you.
One of your best ones.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot more to follow with this, because this timing, there's more going on here than just the content. There's a lot going on in the nation, and this is part of the timing.
Well, Monday night I went to a meeting of Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University. There were probably 200 people there. They had great speakers on the abortion issue. And as instantly as the lecture was and meeting was over, it was immediately available on Facebook. Not
Okay.
on Facebook, but on YouTube. Immediately on YouTube. Anybody can go there now and watch it. How do we get your material more accessible?
Good question. I don't have an answer for that tonight, other than people tuning in here. This is our main way of communicating, and I have mentioned over the weeks different things that I've quoted from George Barna, and I also send Lynn Munsell, that's the president of the university there. He has a book out, and when I consult with especially higher education groups that are people that are starting a school, I want them to look at his book and kind of write their own statement about what they believe. That's kind of that book is like a manifesto of what the school believes.
What's the name of the book?
Wow, I can't. It's out of my sight range. I can see it's over there. Len, Munsil, and is the author. I've written the name several times in the last couple of weeks, but I'm not remembering it right now. Somebody will find it here.
Okay.
Okay?
Well,
Okay.
I plan to go to Centennial Institute offices this week and tell them about you and say, you need to get her off.
Yes, please do. I would love to do that. I do quite a few interviews, radio interviews and things like that, but we have a lot of material here, and we're content rich. And what you're seeing right now is there's a demand for content, and a lot of the stuff that people are producing is just shallow. And my stuff's been thought through and built.
Yours is the best content I've ever found.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dean. I really do. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Dean. I really appreciate it. Oh, okay, one more thing, Dean. Go ahead, Dean.
I spent time at their offices yesterday, and what I learned about them is what's different about Colorado Christian University is that they hold, and Centennial Institute, is that they hold to the value of the uniqueness of the American way and the American system of government. They're kind of like what they're holding on to, and the other groups don't seem to hold on to that.
Yes, yes, that is very well said, and that is stated in this book. Let me see if I can even find it. Okay, somebody else was wanting to say something.
Oh, yes, Dr. Marlene, this is Jeff Toller.
Wonderful.
It's been a while since I've been online, and I'm now reminded of just how much I've been missing. I have to echo Dean's compliments. This is probably the most amazing thing I've heard in quite some time, because it so clearly nails not just the issue, but about 1,000 issues. My concern is that you pointed out we're really at a point now where it's all out in the open now. You have to be something of a Luddite not to be able to understand. The enemy has fully exposed himself, because I believe he's confident that he can pull off the chaos that he so desperately is trying to accomplish. You can't probably answer this, but it seems to me that we have very little time left if we intend to arrest this trajectory or to slow down its progress. Is that a good thing or even a bad thing to ponder?
Well, I think we have to step back and look at what's the real goal. If the goal is to preserve America for Americana, that is a different goal than if what is really going on here is that for the cause of the kingdom, America needed a recalibration, because our kingdom purpose, like, okay, my personal kingdom purpose is to take liberty to the nations. The United States has a kingdom purpose and a kingdom covenant, no matter how much the naysayers and the people who hate God and everything about it believe. That purpose had to do with making way for the gospel for the whole world. We have a gospel purpose. And if you don't use your liberty for its gospel purpose, why should you get to keep it? So this is a call, a plea, this is God's mercy, as bad as it looks, for people to repent and to renounce their selfishness and their idolatry and to come and turn and return to God and see his kingdom purpose, to actually not care. When I say, do you love liberty more than, and just put in a blank, whatever that is. Well, in our country, the liberty that sets the captive free, the Luke 4 liberty, is what Jesus came for. And the sheep nations versus the goat nations also reflect that purpose. So anyway, I don't see it as a bad thing. That's one other thing, Jeff, that I want to get in this answer. And then if you pick up on if there's something else I'm still missing here. But one of the points I want to make is that America needed, especially the American church, needed a theological correction, because you cannot build a culture on the theology that has been circulating. And so you can't build a culture on, especially even the end times doctrine that has been perpetrated, and many times without even question. And then that doctrine has allowed, that end times thinking has allowed escapism, and it has also allowed these different translations of the Bible that have brought in chaos and confusion and redefinition, which takes us to unreality. Okay, like this is all tied together. And see, part of what's going on is so many of our Christian leaders and thinkers think very narrowly and don't have a broad enough base across the different areas of culture to know how all this connects. And when you connect it by principle, then, see, if we teach by principle, then the guy who cares about mathematics takes it and applies it there. The guy who cares about art applies it there. The person who cares about law applies it there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't teach from principle, then you get hung up on the narrowness of details, and you never get a strategy. You spend your time tactically always responding to somebody else's agenda. And my point is, we must come in agreement with God's agenda, and that's where we put our focus. And at first it looks like losing, but in reality it's the winning.
It's the winning, yes. Because I am observing, it's a very slow but I think persistent trend, where the people, not necessarily the leadership within our churches, are seeing this, disconnect from what they have been used to getting and seeing, this cognitive dissonance that I call it. And they are the ones that are beginning to wake up and start to move. Well, so many, at least in the evangelical world that I'm researching, the leadership is really pushing back on the very thing that you're saying and promoting. So I personally think that is very, very interesting and very telling. I remain optimistic for that reason, and when I say optimism, I don't mean this America first, all of that. I'm talking about the very thing you are, which is We need to have the kind of revival where our first and only objective, principal objective, is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and show everyone what liberty in Him really means.
You guys got it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm just one of the best things. I'm not in any way diminishing any of the other webinars I've attended, but this is by far one of the most inspiring. In fact, you caused me to change my headline in tomorrow's essay, and it reads Justice, Reform, or Transformation. And the subhead is there is justice, and then there is injustice. And,
yes.
I can't wait for it to see how it responds. Plus, I have just now got the basics put together for my podcast studio, so hopefully about this time next month, I will be putting together my podcasts.
Very good. Yes, we have enough content for a whole lot of podcasts if we had the staff to make it happen.
Well, I know this to be a fact. In fact, and we'll talk offline at some point, when I interview people, you're at the very top of my list. So I hope you'll be gracious enough to afford me a few minutes of your time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the greatest joys. I actually have a teaching product called Both Sides of the Mic, and it's about how to give a good interview and also how to take one. And so, and it's just a lot of fun is what it is. So it's wonderful.
No doubt. Well, I've had some very limited experience, and so I'm really looking forward to having something good come out. And I've just finally discovered you've talked about philomath. I once was told that that's what I am, and I thought, well, what is that? I have no idea what that word means. And when I discovered what it was, I went, well, you know what? That's kind of what describes it. I love information. I love knowledge. And Proverbs teaches us, seek first wisdom. And that's what it's all about. Thank you again so much.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Yes, we actually have a friend that some of you know, some of the people that are on the line now know, but he's the only person we know who on his business card tells his name, and then all it says is polymath.
Polymath.
And the rest of us go, we love you, but, even if we are, we won't put it on our card.
Well, the worst one I ever saw was a business card handed to me, and the man's title was Order Taker. And I thought that was the most hysterical thing I've ever read. And I used to have that card for years. It was the greatest title that anyone could put on a card voluntarily. So it's funny. Thank you.
Okay. Now, folks, we're going to have more Q&A, and I'm going to give you a chance to speak. But there was something that has come up before. I want you to know we are going to talk also about the kingdom of God versus the kingdom of heaven. So go ahead now. Who wants to be next as far as Q&A?
Dr. Marlene, this is Kathy.
Yes.
I agree. Tonight was excellent. They're all excellent, but tonight was excellent. I just wanted to make a comment about what you said about the way Dr. Wolf took notes. This has been on my mind for quite some time because your webinars are so good, and when I re-watch them, I'm afraid I'm going to miss something, and so I'm very diligent. I think I take good notes too, but I take way too much time, and it doesn't leave me much time to do other things like read or go back and really study or look at, some other things. I feel like I'm always catching up. And I've thought to myself, I wonder if Dr. Marlene ever does any webinars on how to take good notes without it taking so long. So I was just amazed when you said that about him, because I would love to be able to do that and take good notes and not have it take so long. And yet when I would go and look at them, it would, jog my memory. Oh, yeah, that I remember what that was about now, and go. I usually write down, too, when I take notes, the time in the webinar, when I wrote that note, so I can go back and reread it. So do you have any comments or thoughts?
Well, yes, I do, because this relates also to how you read and how you study. So one person may only need the key words, and see, I need different things for different groups. There's certain things I'm looking for, like for a certain teacher, that I would almost take down every word. And even some of the people Jackie and I've studied with over the years, when she first started taking notes, she almost transcribed what they said. After we studied with them a number of years, then we only needed a few of the key points or the new stuff. So, see, that part of what you're doing is you're building a mental frame to hold the information, because what I'm doing here is greater than any one topic. So if somebody just tunes into one webinar, they have there's way more going on to give you a foundation of long-term thought. The other thing is, I have some people that if I don't almost have the whole transcription, but I read fast enough, but it works better for me, I'd rather go back and flip through the longer thing. And then there's other people that I only need the 3 best quotes from that sermon. So you have to get to where are you in your own study, and then what may seem like a long-term project or like it's taking too long. Like if you saw some of the books that, even like the Mind Shift book that we're writing in response to, or some of the other things that I've really worked on as far as studying a book, when the book I studied becomes extremely valuable to me, because I write in it, underline it, highlight it. My ominous parallels is now so many different colors and have so many tabs. I mean, the book's falling apart, but it's still extremely valuable, where other people never write in a book. So figure out your own education style and what works for you, and then what are your priorities. So they may change over time. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes. I'm a slow reader, but I do write in my books and underline. I like to highlight. I don't like to get too messy, though, because I love my books. Mm-hmm. But are you saying that, like, as I go through the webinars, re-listen to them, that I'm kind of laying the foundation for how you teach and what I hear you saying is important and to remember, and then as time goes on, I'll learn how to take briefer notes and still it'll make sense to me. Right,
because like a statement I might make many times is like light accepted brings more light and light rejected brings darkness. Well, once you get that, you don't need to write that down in every webinar that it comes up. But somebody who's never heard it before needs to hear that, and they need to hear it a dozen times to see how it applies, and then they're driving down the road and they're going, oh, that's why they didn't listen. They didn't listen 5 years ago, and now this is what's happening.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. Good question. I'm sure that helps some others, too. Okay. Who wants to be next?
Dr. Marlene?
Yes.
This is Judy Vankovich calling. How are you?
Oh, how wonderful. Canada calls. We love it.
Well, yes and no. Actually, I don't want to go back to communist Canada. I came to Indiana to be with my daughter because she's having a baby, and I can't go back to Canada because they won't let me back in. So I'm going to stay here till the baby comes at Christmas. So anyway, I have 2 questions. Number 1, yes, while I'm here, I want to order all of your books and have them sent to Indiana. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll check with you that. Secondly, I want to know, who is that amazing man with that beautiful voice that's going to have the podcast? Jeff, you have a beautiful voice. My goodness, I'll listen to anything you say.
Thank you very much. It's a result
oh my gosh, keep talking.
Cold right now. So if I could just keep this cold for a few years, I'll be good.
Oh my gosh, I want to get a cold then. No, that's hilarious.
He sounds really good without the cold, so it'll be fine.
Jeff, where are you? Jeff, where are you?
I'm in a bunker in Louisville, Kentucky.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, really. An odd place to be transplanted from. I'm originally a refugee from the People's Republic of California.
And I'm from the People's Republic of Canada with a K.
There you go.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I would love for Dr. Marlene to introduce us, but I just appreciate all of you. Dr. Marlene was an excellent historical overview today that every high school and college student should hear. We just need to get this message out there. I feel almost selfish getting it all by myself. So, I mean, I did send it out to about 50 people today. I don't know if they got on. Hello to my friends if they're on. But thank you, Dr. Marlene.
Well, thank you. And I did send you a text or an email about how to order books. But if you don't have that, you just let me know and we'll get it done.
You betcha. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. But give plenty of time to get things. I mean, books have been coming really, really fast. But even though they keep telling us production-wise, they're fast on production, but on transport that we can't count on delivery now that we're coming into Christmas time.
Okay,
got
it.
Like fast delivery, like we've been having. It'll get there, but for not to try to expect it to be as quick as it's been. That's what I'm getting at.
No worries. No worries. God bless you.
Okay. Okay. Who wants to be next?
Dr. Marlene?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sandra Claxton.
Oh, how amazing. Hugs and blessings. Go ahead.
Yes. I just wanted to say hello to you, and I'll be in contact very soon. This has been amazing, and I'm so glad to be back on.
Well, we're glad to have you. Okay, it makes my heart warm just to know you're there, and it's very good. And I really want to say too, I want to tell everybody about this blessing, but I so appreciate it. I just made a very quick trip for Thanksgiving. We just were like like in the day. We went up to see my son. That's not real far from you, I think. And I would have loved to have seen you, but that wasn't going to happen because I had the whole family with me and all that. But my point is, then we also then went back to Arkansas where my daughter lives. And one of the things, this may sound crazy, folks, that we do is we love to go to the Goodwill there. It's the best Goodwill that you'll ever see because their books are not on the computer system. Like you can go there and it's literally $2 for a hardback adult book, $1 for a paperback adult book, $1 for a hardback child's book and 50 cents for a hardback child's book, unless they're a collectible, and then they're $2 for the child's book. So I'm looking at these books, and it is like this book moves and is like handed to me. And it's absolutely huge. It's a book about law, but it's also about the art and literature of law. And I've seen this book before it's really a book you would have fancy law office on the coffee table book, but then it's almost too nice to leave out because you don't want anybody to tear it up. And to make a long story short, I got this wonderful, it had been $75, this $75 book for $2. The thing weighs about 5 pounds, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And it has all these things in it that would take years of research. It's set up in some ways, and kind of like the Red Books, from Face. And there's many things in it that are just, it was just a hug from heaven. And I really think it was a reminder from the Lord that he hasn't forgotten that we have this biblical law class and that there's still a lot of things that are going to happen here in the future that are just meant to be, and no matter what the circumstances look like, the vision is still there. So anyway, thank you for identifying yourself and letting us know you were there. Okay, who wants to say anything else? Okay, well,
Marlene.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Joan. So much just to thank you for this incredible lesson tonight. Just absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to say?
I wish I had quickly formulated. I do not, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, in the next couple weeks, you'll also have time to see, part of why we do it this way, I know we move at breakneck speed, but part of why we stay on one topic for a little bit of time sometimes is because your mind has to think about it, and you all of us build and learn kind of one idea on top of another, and there's a convergence of thought that happens when you study with other people who are also thinking in these areas. Now, something I want on this side of the recording I'm going to mention, and some of you have already been watching this, but some of what Catherine Austin Fitz has been saying lately, she's actually talking about some things I had already written these 3 weeks, and I'm actually adding a little bit of, I'm going to incorporate a little bit of what she has said in some of these future, the next couple webinars, but I want you all to know about her teaching. It is on, it's the one, How They Will Control Movement. So if you look her up and look up that concept, it's some places it's on what is called brand new tube. So it's not YouTube, it's brand new tube. And I was founded another way, but I want everybody to know that. And then I also want you all to plan to watch the children's story. We've been talking about it a little bit, but the movie, the children's story, the James Clavell story, it's 23 minutes long, maybe 25, depending on which system you see it. And we talked about it a little bit before class, but not with the idea of taking notes, but more your observations. Like, what do you see in there that you see either happening today or that you observe even from going through our brainwashing teaching? So I want people to know that. Also, let's right now go ahead, and then we'll still, we were very early, which gives us a few minutes. I won't take up extra time. When we're done, we're done. We are going to do a little bit of after class, but I also want to remind you that we have teaching on the kingdom. And these are either called Kingdom 101, or that was, I think, the last title, is if you want to request the webinar, it was Kingdom 101. And in that, it talks about, and I'm just going to read you the slides. It says the Bible mentions both the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven, because we had somebody ask about the difference between these. And I say often these are confused as being the same. The kingdom of God is internal, and the kingdom of heaven is outside of yourself, but not necessarily the third heaven. The kingdom of heaven is what we are talking about when we say bringing heaven to earth, instead of going to heaven when we die. The kingdom of God is internal, that's within, and precedes movement into heaven that is external or without. I also have in some of the handwritten notes, the kingdom of heaven is God's domain, and we are to learn how to rule and reign with Christ. And I teach this also in our religion versus the kingdom. And part of what we're teaching here about liberty, if people have a religious mindset, then they're trying to fit the nation into religion. And they're trying to force compliance of everybody into religion. And part of the genius of the kingdom mindset, part of why we were able to have more liberty for more people at any time in the history of the world, was because it was not coming from a religious mindset. And so a religious mindset will get you like a communist country, like you have throughout Central and South America. You have, they're called Christian countries, they're Catholic countries, Roman Catholic countries, and they're Marxist. And you go, how can that be? Well, it's because religion and tyranny go together. So we're not going to reteach that all right now, but I want to call this to your attention because this is part of where the church leaders that are religious leaders, the churchmen, have failed the nation and failed the globe by trying to fit people into religion instead of showing them the government of the kingdom that starts with our individual self-government and then governs the home and then shows an example in the church that puts out how to govern the civil government. And the more individual self-government you have, the less external you need. So part of the answer, part of the solution, as we'll get into in the weeks ahead, of if you want to have liberty and have less civil government, less centralization, less totalitarianism, or no totalitarianism, then you're going to have to get yourself governed. You're going to have to govern yourself and teach others around you to govern themselves. And some of us want to do the one but not the other, and they both go together. Okay, any more questions or comments?
I just put in the chat box another link I found to that Catherine Austin Fitz. There was a glitch in the link that you sent me, so I found another link to the same one. The title of her talk was actually called "Useful Steps for Navigating the Financial Reset." So I just put that link in the chat box.
Oh, great, great. I need to get that right in my notes. It went perfectly on mine, but I am so glad you are telling us this. Useful steps for what?
Her talk was entitled "Useful Steps for Navigating the Financial Reset."
Very good. Okay. So it will help everybody the more that you have watched that. And I will say this, if you're not used to watching her, and even though I do watch her a good little bit, I've listened to it twice or watched it twice, and I'm contemplating, even while I was driving with the sun in my eyes for hours, but one of the things I was thinking through was some of what she'd said.
Right. And one of her suggestions I can't wait to talk about with you, it actually is a combination of financial and educational. I just thought it was an amazing opportunity for, as she suggested, all homeschooling families, etc., encourage their kids to do something. I just thought it was really, really interesting.
Great. Okay, now also, if you haven't looked at Plandemic, that's Plandemic, the Plandemic series, I think it's even plandemicseries.com. I should have had that right here, but the point is, this is Mickey Willis, and there's a book called Plandemic, and I actually will talk more about it offline, because some of it is just dated material. But I want everybody to know what they're doing and to know that that book is out, and I've met a lot of the people that are involved, and it's just amazing how God is using people of all different persuasions. And see, this is another point. Sometimes Christians get where they will only work with another Christian or can only see how God is using that other Christian. But sometimes he uses people of different persuasions, and you never know how he's working in their lives. And so even somebody who believes in natural law, or somebody who believes in things that are absolutely not biblical, but they still want to have freedom and liberty, at some level, make them an ally and teach them what biblical liberty is without rubbing religion in their face, but giving them the opportunity to embrace the joy of the Lord and the truth of the Word. And many times you'll find that they're more receptive to the Word of God than the person who goes to church every Sunday. I mean, I quote the Word freely, I just don't rub it in their face, and I give them unconditional love. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, Marlene, you've probably mentioned the book that Vishal has a chapter in, Don't Let Your Schooling Get in the Way of Your Education.
Now, the book I think about, now you're saying the title, that's the title of the book.
By Daryl Miller, yes. The title is
Yes.
Don't Let Schooling Stand in the Way of Your Education. It's an outstanding book.
Yes, and he is really a fascinating person. He's somebody I've wanted to get to know over the years, but yes. And then Vishal has this third education revolution. And some of his other books, I've been trying to get people to read them. And then I got to spend an hour with him in Dallas here a while back. And we did like 3 days where we went around the world, in 3 days in 1 hour. But it was so grand. And so it was just a total blessing. And I need to read more of his. I've read a lot of his work already, but that's one of my goals here in the next few weeks, to get more of his material read. So thank you for bringing up that Daryl Miller book.
If you don't have it, I'll send it to you.
I do not have that book, and I would love to have it.
I just need to know an address to send it to. So.
Okay, I'll send you a text after we get off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That's grand. Wonderful. Okay, anybody have anything else that you want to say on this side? Okay, then I just want to bless you. I want to bless you for caring about liberty. I want to bless you with hope for the future, that you will have eyes to see, that will be Holy Spirit eyes, and you will see what God is doing that's greater than the way it appears, and that you will trust Him for provision, for direction, for guidance, for the relationships that will be, to put it in the words that Catherine Austin Fitz brought up, your family, of who can you trust, that the Lord will bring you people in your life that you can trust, that will help you both locally and then across the nation and around the globe. And I just bless you in every way that you will be able to walk in such joy, that even the way you stand in line at a store or the way you do things, people will notice and go, why are you so happy, when they're so discouraged. So blessings on each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us.
And this concludes the recording.